and welcome to the Junkyard Love Podcast.
At what age do we learn how to have better conversations? At what age do we learn to have better conversations with ourselves?
Folks, it's me, the Batman, and welcome to the Junkyard Love Podcast. Today we have Ian and Shaye of ReEducation. I'm super pumped for the episode, but before we get going, I'm going to give you a recommendation. Today it's in the form of a documentary. That documentary is on Netflix, and it's called The Social Dilemma. You absolutely have to watch this dang documentary, and you have to change your life accordingly. If you haven't drank any water today, get some water, take care of yourself. Stretch your body, unfurrow your brow, relax your shoulders. Let's get to it. The Junkyard Love Podcast featuring ReEducation, Ian and Shaye. Let's go. We kind of figured we would keep this kind of conversational-ish and casual. I thought it was cool that you guys were talking about you're now doing adult meeting people. You're meeting new friends that way, so we can almost even treat it like this, just be inquisitive with one another. We could start with, tell us about ReEducation, and then if you guys could squeeze some of your background as just individuals, like what's led you to this too, we'll get it going. Tell me about ReEducation.
Sure. Shaye, I feel like I always hand this question off to you, and you always do a really good job. Do you want to do that here as well?
That's so funny because I feel like I always hand it off to you because I never want to start.
Okay.
But I love that you offered the baton to me, so I will take it.
Okay.
Yeah, so ReEducation started, Ian had suggested it months and months ago, and it took us forever to finally get the ball rolling. But and I think the reason for that was because he originally suggested the name Hamster Fight, which made no sense to me, and I didn't quite, the concept wasn't totally there. But now the concept is we do 2-week immersions into various topics, and we try and dive as deep as humanly possible while still currently having jobs. We've done crazy things so far. We did we've done microdosing. That was actually a 4-week immersion. We've done makeup. We've done podcasts. We've done reality TV. We're in the middle of one on friendship right now, which is already like such a crazy subject. It's just one of these subjects that sounds so simple, and then as soon as you start digging into it, and you peel back the layers of that onion, you realize how complicated and intricate it really is. But yeah, I guess about myself, like Ian and I both met in Gainesville, Florida. Living together, we met in an existentialism class, and like within two or three.
You're gonna have to explain that at some point.
I always make the joke. I'm like,
Existentialism
we met in the most like pretentious way possible in a college existentialism class. Like, there's no worse way to meet someone. And like, how did you two meet? Because as soon as that comes up, you're like, here we go. We met in an existentialism class, and that is like a trigger for people to leave the conversation. They're like, yeah, this conversation is over, man. I can already tell it. I don't want to talk to you.
See you later. Well, I'm still here for it.
Oh, nice.
You're like, oh no, my Zoom is it's weird. I can't hear you guys.
It's going through a tunnel. I don't.
Yeah,
that's great. I feel like you guys have good chemistry. Go on.
Yeah, I don't know how
Thanks,
that worked
man.
out because I didn't really like Ian at all at first. And Ian's just such a funny guy, and he can command a room, and still now, but especially back then, I just loved attention. And so Ian was just a lot better than me at getting it, so he was my natural rival. But then he was just so charming that I got over the jealousy, and then was just charmed myself. And then like 2 or 3 months later, like I don't know why, like I guess his apartment like was up, the lease was up or something, and he ended up moving in with me for like 2 or 3 months or something.
Well, we got really close really fast, and I was actually thinking about that during. So like you'd mentioned, the camp we're doing right now is adult friendship. And one of the things that we're kind of doing during this camp is, I think, reflecting on friends we've made in the past. And I was thinking about ours, and like, what is it that bonded us together super quickly? I mean, like, we became fast friends. We became friends really fast because I think, like, 2 months after knowing you, like, we were living together.
living together and working together. Ian got me a job at the University of Florida teaching, basically teaching foreign exchange students English. And I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. And then we spent like shortly after moving in together, he got a job and left the country, and we basically didn't see each other for 6 years.
7 years.
7
Did you
years.
guys text every day via
Not
satellite
really.
phone or?
No, we did, like, honestly, our friendship was like on definite pause. For a long time. We'd occasionally catch up and text, but then as soon as we like started hanging out again, right after Ian got back into the country, it was as if nothing had happened. You know, it's just like, oh yeah, this guy, what's up?
Perfect. That's great. Yeah.
It's really crazy.
That was crazy. I actually forgot about that, to be completely. Yeah, it's like as soon as I saw this guy again, it's like we picked up right where we left off. I mean,
I forgot about your 6-year breakup.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like you kept going.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna dig in a little bit more, just about your guys' individual background. So that's how you met.
Yeah.
Well, you guys both have such good chemistry, and you're able to pick that chemistry back up like nothing. Do you guys have a lot of the same interests? I mean, I know a few of your interests just off the top list that I saw over on Reddit, but you guys want to explain to the listeners a couple of your interests too and how they overlap there? Because I think I feel like with the podcast for this, I'm always trying to point out where people are the same and like different bridges that we can cap. Because you can have nothing in common, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, you like little plastic Dragon Ball Z figurines? And that's just a bridge, you know? So I feel like you guys have a lot of those. Your chemistry is fantastic, like I've said it multiple times now.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Shaye, do you? I just always want to defer to you. I'm like, yeah, you start, and then like once you pick up momentum, I'm like drafting on you like it's a bicycle race or a triathlon or something.
That's great. I love it. I like to think of it as you're just riding on my coattails, but that's fine too. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were both musicians. We actually have an incredibly similar backstory. It's bizarre. Like both of us almost didn't graduate high school, and then had this weird come to Jesus moment, and then went to college, and then ended up becoming super academic afterwards. We were like both had disciplinary problems, and super creative, super outgoing people, and I don't know. I know we were both recording music a lot.
Mm-hmm. What kind of music do you guys record? What did you get into?
I'm in a band, so I do like indie electronic music. The band's called Retrolux, and it's me and a singer. A really good friend of mine. She lives in Toronto now, so we're split apart. It's crazy. Ian and I are split apart as well. So I'm in New York. Yeah. Ian's in Boston. So all of my like collaborations are remote now, which I guess for most people now that's the norm, which is interesting. But yeah, so I do like the indie electronic, and I think Ian, you do it was interesting. The kind of music you did was really interesting, I thought.
I was kind of all over the place. So my first band was actually like a weird alternative band. And then like the music I got really serious with in high school was I was in a screamo band at like the peak of like just the screamo phase and like the mid 2000s.
Who'd you listen to screamo band wise?
Oh my god. I'm aging and like outing myself. It's just like a
like
very
it's slipping
specific
away. It's so insignificant now. You're like, I don't listen to it anymore.
So I loved, like just like all like the main stuff, I guess, like The Used, Census Fail, From First to Last, Thursday, just like you're I don't want to say like the basics, but like that's pretty much what it is. It's like it's like the starter pack screamo for kids.
100%. Yes, I fit in with all of those. I was nodding my head furiously. I've purchased those shirts at Hot Topic myself.
Oh my god!
Amazing.
Right? Yeah, just like, oh yeah, dude, check out this sweet new Used shirt.
Yeah, I would get my school clothes at either Hot Topic or Warped Tour when they were floating around.
See, I always wanted to be that kid. I like remember there was no Hot Topic within driving distance of where I grew up. And I remember being like 13, 14 and demanding my mom take me shopping so I could buy some black clothes. And we ended up in Macy's. And I was like, no, it's not the right kind. Like, where's the cool black clothes? And I just didn't understand. I had never even heard of Hot Topic, so I was a poser.
Moms
I guess.
just don't understand.
Moms don't get it. Come on, moms.
God, I remember my mom just being so worried about me going through that phase too. Like I remember one time I was watching VH1's Behind the Music, and it was about like Guns N' Roses, and it was the part where they're like, I don't know, Slash or Axl, I'm not sure of their names. It was like, yeah, and that's when the heroin started.
Yeah,
and my mom
shooting heroin. Yeah.
my mom like turned off the TV, and she's like, "Is this where you want to end up? Is this where you want to end up?" And I was like, I mean, like, no, like, no kid watches that and like, forget the music. Like, why can I get heroin?
I'm putting this guitar down. That was where I want to go.
Like, oh, I can just buy heroin? I thought I had to be a musician to do heroin. Well, like, what am I doing?
Well, that's super cool. So I am a DJ now. I mean, I'm. It's weird. I haven't been a DJ for a few months now. There's not exactly too many gigs.
Right.
But I got into music myself. I didn't have much of a musical background, just kind of like an obsession. I always had headphones in. I was the Walkman kid. I had so many songs on my MP3 player after the Walkman. Always listening to music, always going to shows and stuff. And then eventually, after high school, I decided, I was like, dude, I think I could do that thing that guy's doing up there. And I've learning DJing for 9 years or now. So,
Oh, wow.
and I learned, you learn, of course, some music, and you kind of backhanded learn a lot of weird audio stuff. And music theory is so confusing to me, but I have a part inside me that understands it, whatever that means. But so last couple of years, I've been really exploring the musician side. I've been trying to learn piano in my own way, and try to, learn. I eventually want to be a musician is essentially where I'm at with my DJing. But it's been a really cool journey, and it's really cool to talk to other musicians. I feel like they always have great perspectives on things.
Have you tried producing at all?
Yeah, I feel like I have just a ton of ADHD, and so a lot of times if it's not quick, I don't want to pull up the same project. So sometimes I'll spend all day working on something, just the same kick, just looping it, whatever. But then the next day I don't want to pull it back up.
That's
Right.
how I was. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do a good amount of edits and stuff. Like for my DJ sets, I like adding in a bunch of spoken word stuff and making different mashups in that way. I'll lean more into producing as I continue down the music world, but right now I'm just a novice learning.
You and I kind of went like the opposite way a little bit because and Shay and I have had this conversation too. Like after the Screamo band broke up. After we broke up, man, the future.
Did you scream at each other?
Yeah, it was. I wanted to make like a screamo pun, but I couldn't think of one that I wanted to go with. But yeah, like I started making acoustic music and did like a solo project, and then music just started gradually getting more and more electronic, and I was just kind of like, I think I'm going to go ahead and bow out. Like, it's just, I can like become an engineer basically, or I can just like respectfully say, well, it's been fun. And, I kind of went back to, like Shay had mentioned, I was like, maybe I should just go to college. So
yeah, that's good.
It's funny because I was the exact opposite. I was like, things are going electronic, and I was already recording a little bit in the studio, and I was like, I think I could do that. And I started learning like MIDI and all the programming stuff, and that was super fascinating, and I wanted to really dive in and learn that. And it's just so much easier when you don't have a space to practice. It's just you in a room with all your controllers. You can just do whatever and experiment, and there's like very little opportunity cost because you don't need someone to come in and track. You don't need a bassist. You can just play a synth bass. I mean, obviously it doesn't sound the same, but you can make something that sounds some way, hopefully somewhat interesting. But
yeah. I always like the Duncan Trussell, who's a comedian that I've noted him through Joe Rogan's podcast. Watching him on Joe Rogan's podcast, he had this sentence that I was like, that is so perfect. He's like, sometimes you just need to like be in a dark room with your synthesizer, just crying and drooling over it. Or something along those lines. And I was like, yeah, there is that emotional release of just being able to make some stuff on an electrical thing, just some sound to come out of my fingers from this MIDI controller. It's a really good thing. I think there's a lot of healing in that in a weird way.
It's totally meditative, 100%, especially sound design, or like you like, if you make your own synth and then you're just like, all right, I spent 10 minutes like making a really cool synth sound, like now what am I going to do with it? And then you just like explore what this new sound is like, and if anything cool or catchy or emotional can come out of that.
I was going to ask, do you guys have like a favorite song that you've written and like why?
I'll let you take that, Jake.
Well, okay, so I'm pretty new to songwriting. I love songwriting. I think it's the coolest thing. Some days I'm like very grandiose and I like to just to give myself confidence. I'm like, I'm secretly so good at songwriting. I think that I'm terrible, but some days I'm really in my head. I'm like, dude, you're really good. So I write a lot of songs and I'm still so fresh, like the last 2 years of really actually trying to sit down and make something. But I did have a couple months ago, I had this like spoken word poetic piece that I had a few friends over and I performed it for them. I basically captivated them in my basement here and said, listen to my art. And I played it for them and they were supportive of it. So
The
that is
door
my
locked
favorite.
behind them.
Yeah, I locked them. I shut the doors and the deadbolt and everything. And so that's my favorite song right now. And I don't even have a name for it, but it's just like this spoken word piece.
I love that.
Yeah. What about you, Shay?
Man, I don't know. Like my music background is split because I either do entirely electronic or just for myself and for my close friends, I'll write songs on guitar. So I wrote a song for my girlfriend recently, and it's like the first song I've written in like a year or something where I actually sing and like I write lyrics because I never normally do that. And I guess right now it's my favorite because it's so like writing lyrics and singing yourself. It's just so much more emotionally close. I guess that's what you're talking about with the spoken word. And I'm just so used to normally having I'm just so used to normally having all of that outsourced to someone else, and like I can create like an emotional canvas for someone else to imbue the more specific meaning. And so for me to like actually write down some lyrics, and like my girlfriend's really shy, so I wrote this song called Hide and Seek, and which is so lame, and I know it's been done like and
Yeah,
whatever,
right.
but like what are you gonna do? So, and it's like the lyrics are just like they border on creepy, and I think like a lot of love songs, they're like in the wrong light, it's creepy. It's only if it's wanted that it's good. But it's just like talking about how it's like you can go ahead and play hide and seek, but like I see you. Like you can try your best to hide from me, but it doesn't work. Like I see who you are, and like I love you, and like you can put up all these walls and like try and hide yourself as like in your own way, whatever that means for you, but it doesn't matter. I'm here. I see you. Like I love you, and it was really impactful for me and for our relationship. And I don't know. So I don't know. Really, I don't know.
That was really touching, man. Gee,
Yeah, that was.
I didn't even know this.
Yeah, that sounds like a good song. I think I really like the I see you. I think that's something that, when you're experiencing love in a relationship, it's something that you can communicate through is this like, no, really, you can look them in the eye and say, I see you. And it means something way different than anybody else in the world saying that same thing to you at that moment.
Right. Yeah, we just so one of the camps we did, the immersions for the podcast, was into microdosing, and as it turned out, we ended up just doing like a ton of macrodosing. And
All right, wait, okay. Do you want to lay out this journey for me, like how it went? Imagining the people haven't yet listened to that episode, so maybe leave them with a little bit of.
well, that one's out, so they may have, but
Okay, yeah,
I won't give too much away, but I mean, yeah, just so I guess like a side story of this, a spin-off of the whole camp was me and my girlfriend were laying in bed. We decided we were going to do a macro dose. I had never really done like a high level acid trip, and she had never really done it at all. So we took some acid and put on a huge playlist that was all of Grizzly Bear's entire discography, some Andrew Bird, and we put on a big blank wall that she has in a room, projector of Planet Earth with the audio off. So it was just Grizzly Bear and then Planet Earth. And there was just a point where we would just like stare at each other sobbing. And like every time like she could see me looking at her, there was that thing. It's like, no, we really see each other. And that's really kind of what the feelings that made that song kind of come from.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I imagine that's probably something that when you guys first set out to do that episode, you didn't think that was going to be something that would come out of it. Like one of the most deep, meaningful situations with your significant other.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shay.
It's been crazy. Like we're constantly surprised, I think, with what we think that it's going to be like, and then what it ends up turning out to be.
That's what I was gonna say too. Is like every time, and it's been really fun, and I hope that comes through for anybody that listens to our podcast. But I mean, like the first one we started out doing, we picked something really simple. We were like, all right, like we'll kind of use this subject to also learn how to just make a podcast. So we won't, really get in our own ways too much. And we did reality TV. And the goal was to watch like 2 hours of reality TV every day. And by the end, I was like watching The Simple Life, like, writing in my journal, like, oh, I get it. Like Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie, they're like a metaphor for the way like aristocrats like rule over and make life harder for middle America. I get it. So it goes on like these whole, there's like all of these like thoughts and feelings that just kind of come out of left field. And like a lot of it has been really teaching us more about ourselves, I think too. Like,
Yeah. The reality TV one especially, like there was this big question that really caught us by surprise, which we just weren't expecting at all. And it was the question of whether or not the criticism of reality TV, because I feel like everyone criticizes reality TV as it's like, it's garbage TV or whatever. And we started to wonder if the criticism of reality TV itself was maybe sexist, like it was, or based in some kind of gender bias, because a lot of the TV they're talking about is like reality TV geared at women. And that was this weird reflection that seems obvious to us now, but at the time it was like, wait, are we like being really sexist all of a sudden? Like we didn't even understand it, because we were like, haha, reality TV, it's so dumb. And then we're like, oh man, this is like a medium that's like targeted towards women. I mean, they self-describe like, and they market themselves sometimes as trash TV, but still, even considering that, it was a question that like all of a sudden was like eye-opening and shocking, and like we really had to pump the brakes for a minute during the immersion.
Yeah, that was an interesting moment. And I mean, was it your friend that brought up the point as well that we had interviewed a friend of Shaye's who had kind of brought up that like no one talks about reality TV shows for men the same way, like Viva La Bam and Jackass, like these shows that are just objectively way worse in terms of just the stupidity that they kind of project or capture, and those just kind of get ignored, and like all the focus is on Real Housewives and The Bachelor.
Right. Yeah, that's a super interesting perspective, because I don't think I would have thought of either of those things. The men's reality TV show. I mean, I grew up watching CKY and all those guys just like drop kick each other in the face as a teenager. And it's interesting because it makes you kind of think, it's almost just a reminder of not everything is for everyone. I know that sounds so overly obvious, but like we consume things that are in like the popular media as if it's like, this is what everyone should like, and it's this one layer. And it's sometimes you got to be reminded of like, when you actually indulge in it, and it's not that it sucks, it's just that it's not your thing a lot of the times. Yes.
We ended up talking about that as well. Like one of the I don't know if I would call it like a realization or just conversation that we had Shay, but it was that like who was it, Schoenberg, that idea like, oh, if it's for art, it's not for all, and if it's for all, then it's not art. And we just kind of talked about like the atomization of culture in general, and like we're at this area of like hyper specificity to the extent that like nothing is for everyone anymore. So it's like in that sense, like everything is art for someone in some capacity. So I mean, it really took us down a rabbit hole, but it was super interesting to think about this thing that's relatively ubiquitous in like American culture. So it was a blast to think about for 2 weeks.
It was also just shocking because we didn't see that coming. We thought like the premise of the show is to check our biases and our preconceptions. That's the whole idea. We're re-educating ourselves. That's the point. But I think even then, I thought we still kind of thought we were going to go in, be like, just, like go through the motions, like try and see other perspectives. But then we were like actually shocked to see this depth in this art form that is, I don't know, always ridiculed and always thought of as a lower common denominator. But I don't know, now it just feels to me more akin to a weird, like really progressive folk art where it's like hyper in your face, but it is kind of for everyone. It's like graffiti. It's aggressive and it's loud, but it's entertaining in its own way,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Like, you just by diving into the culture for 2 weeks, you're like, oh, okay, I get this much more. Have you guys changed a lot so just from when you first had the conceptual idea of like, oh, we could do this, and we're inquisitive and we're willing to try these things, whatever, just then till now, have you guys like changed your approach towards how you're going to handle the upcoming episodes and the upcoming immersions?
I'll let you take this one, Ian.
That's a really great, tough question. You know what's so interesting is like when we first started these camps, I was asking impossible questions. So with every camp, we try to give ourselves like a guiding question to help us think about it moving forward. So we're not just kind of groping blindly through the subject. And mine have been like really difficult. Like my first question was, Shay, what was my first question? I already forgot it.
I think it was like, how does reality TV reflect the zeitgeist of our era?
That was the podcast one. So
Okay.
the podcast one was what like how do podcasts reflect the zeitgeist of our age? I think reality TV was can reality TV be art?
Can it be art? Right. Yeah.
Microdosing was when we did microdosing. It was can microdosing help you achieve transcendence and thus also not support, what's the word I'm looking for, I guess help you reach self-actualization. And then for makeup camp it was,
I think it was like what is beauty or something.
Yeah, so it's like my question started really broadly, and like as we've continued to do this, I've kind of realized that like I really need to narrow my focus because I've just been super overwhelming myself. And it's kind of proven for good comedy because like halfway through, I'm like, why did I do this?
Yeah,
Like, this
you're
is
like writing a
impossible.
book.
Yeah, no, I mean more or less that's what it was like. So like yeah, like Shay, what about you?
How I've changed. Honestly, I think I feel more confident now just from this experience to try and believe something for a little while with the understanding that I can be wrong in that belief and revisit it later. I think starting out, I was really afraid to commit to an idea about something I don't already know a lot about, which I think is a good thing in some ways. I don't think it's good to commit so firmly to a belief without having a lot of grounding to it. But I do think that for me it was a little bit disabling. And I think now I can proceed with some confidence in some conviction in my understanding of things, with the understanding that they can always be revisited, that I'm going to be wrong regardless of how much conviction I put in it or not. Sometimes I'm going to be wrong. So now at least I can take a deep breath and continue with some confidence. And then now just be like, oh, okay, well, that was a wrong idea. Like I messed up, and now I can just acknowledge that and move on. And there's no catastrophe. You know, now I'm still here.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great point. Go on, Ian.
I was just gonna say too, like maybe the most beneficial or the most fun part about this project, and Shay, I'm not sure if you would agree or not. Maybe you would. Is that it's been great to kind of help me approach my cognitive dissonance abstractly, like to be able to kind of see it as something that I'm trying to dissect for an audience, as opposed to just like something that's fundamental to who I am as a person. And that's when we kind of talked about like we've been learning a lot about ourselves. It's like instead of you get into an argument with someone and I don't know, they say something like, well, all lives matter. And then like, there's just kind of that instinct where you're like, it just kicks in and you're like, wow, fucker.
Yeah.
Not that we've been getting into stuff like that, but like, beliefs that I've had, and then I'm having these experiences and like, I'm having different opinions about them, and it's different from what I thought. And then just kind of being able to like, feel that and then dissect it and be like, well, what is this coming from? How can I explain this to people? And that's really helped just kind of, I don't know, like dissect the self and be like, oh, okay, like this is why I feel this way about this thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. Because that's why like what your guys' podcast, what you guys are doing really caught my eye is like, I think right now, especially in the world as individuals, we all need to kind of take a look at why we think we know so much about what we think we know. It's such a weird on so many. Weird is not even the word. There needs to be a new word beyond weird for what's going on everywhere in the world right now. Like we can't seem to make sense of it. Like we're yelling over each other's heads and between each other's legs, but we think we're having like a logistical argument or something. So I think it's really cool that you guys are taking a look in like, oh, what do I know about this now? And what do I know after emerging myself in it for 2 weeks? I think that, so for me, because I kind of gained this over the last couple of years, I kind of gained this like remain in disbelief um, sort of thing when I'm hosting the podcast. I really try to like just be open to whatever and really just like almost believe at that moment anyway, everything anybody's telling me at that moment, so I can feel what it really feels like. And through more episodes, after the episodes and a couple weeks later, after I've had time to sit on the content, to sit on the conversations, I can find areas where I'm like, I don't actually believe that. Or no, I feel more stern of where I'm at. It's almost the same thing that you guys were saying, is it's almost solidifying who I am and desolidifying who I'm not in strange particular ways.
Yeah.
I do really like that too. It's I don't know. I love it. It's such I feel like it's like a beginner's mind, right? It's like or
Yes.
not. It's like the student's mind, like trying to continuously just remain open to experience. And I'm sure you learn a lot more with that mindset. I imagine you
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah. Can we take a side road and talk about, like, can you think of something that each of you, how did you get to where you're even open to this? Because I think there's a lot of people who, to even mold into the beginner's mind, I'll say that the first 25 years of my life, I mean, I was always fairly growth mindset. I was pretty like self-determined in those sort of ways, but I don't think that I was as open to that beginner's mind as I am now. I'm just like a total infant with new conversations now. I'm like, yeah, just teach me. And I think that awareness, like noticing where we're sometimes a know-it-all, or we think we have something figured out, or a subject, I think that's a huge, great starting point for anybody who's maybe on the edge of like, all right, I'm going to try to get this beginner's mind going for myself. So what do you guys have on that beginner's mind? How'd you get there?
I feel like Ian's better at this. If I'm
I'm
being
asking
totally
the weird, intricate questions.
No, I mean, I actually, are we allowed to swear on here, by the way? Because I threw in an
Fuck
F-bomb.
yeah, man. I mean, flip yeah, just so you're confused.
Because I fucking love this question. I think this is such a great question, and like right off the bat, there are like three things I want to say to kind of answer this question, because it's like three cars kind of trying to drive out of a tunnel simultaneously. So I'm gonna try to walk through this in a way that's like logical and sensible. So I mean, immediately based on your question about just like trying to be open to stuff, like that's like the conversation mindset where if you look at, I mean, every sentence is essentially like a thesis, right? Like that in of itself, like is a claim. It's hot, it's cold. Like there's an idea in there that, and you're trying to, like solidify it as a fact about an objective fact about the world. Because in a way, like, you feeling a certain way is an objective fact. And then another person can, subjectively interpret that and be like, well, no, it's a little cold. I don't really think you felt that way. Because everything that you say is an interpretation on behalf of another person. So you do, if you want to do something like this, you have to kind of suspend that disbelief that you had said. And you can be like, okay, like, absolutely. I can imagine myself feeling that way. I'm cold, but I could see why you're hot. So it's just, and that's something I feel like I learned in like linguistics. When I took linguistics courses in college and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh, like language is just an attempt to kind of construct reality. Like, I get it now. Like, we're all just kind of, it's all a fairy tale that we live in, and we're trying to like kind of communicate that story to another person. So it's like, we're all kind of, it's almost like, I imagine, if I were to try to make it like a more physical metaphor, everyone's kind of living in a bubble, but the bubbles are porous. So it's like you kind of try to intermix that interpretation of the world with another person, and then like you try to come to a mutual understanding of where you both are. And then the second one, and I'll be really short, was I just remember reading, and this is super cheesy, but I read an Einstein of I read an Einstein. What the fuck? I read a biography of Einstein, and he wrote in a letter to his first wife, like, may we never lose our childlike sense of curiosity about the world. And I was like, oh, that's why he was a fucking genius, because he approached everything with a child's mind and was just like, I don't fully understand how this works. And I think that like it's so easy to kind of, and it's not, it's not even easy. And Shaye and I have talked about this during Acid Camp. It's the default mode network. like it's a survival thing. Like it's biological, and we forget that we're animals sometimes because we're higher order animals. But like our instinct to immediately categorize things as like yes, no, good, bad, hot, cold, big, small. It was a biological survival technique, so that we would be like, okay, tall grass equals big lion. Dark water equals bad to drink. Bitter fruit equals diarrhea. And that just kind of grew and expanded into, like modern society. So it's like we still have that lizard brain that is quick to judge. But we forget that like we don't necessarily need that for, ideas or human relationships. So that was very long-winded, and I apologize, but that's my best attempt to answer like a really difficult but fun question.
That was valiant, mate. I loved it. That was great.
Yeah.
Like
Shaye, your turn.
I was like, I feel the eyes. They're pointing at me now. I don't know. I really like Ian's answer. I'll just say ditto, and then no. But I think what Ian said about the kind of like the psycholinguistic approach to it really resonated with me as well, because I studied like linguistics kind of through like a back road. Like I just like started learning other languages and then learning a ton about grammar, and then kind of through grammar ended up learning a lot about linguistics, and then kind of more like this psycholinguistic approach. But I think what you get when you kind of take that approach and you open up your mind, you realize that you like all of language, and like every word, like kind of to bounce off what you're saying, Ian, every word is just an attempt at encapsulating an idea somehow. So you say the word couch, and well, what exactly is couch? Like there is no one couch. There is a range of things in which something could be a couch. So, even that's fluid, which, it seems like such a concrete idea. But, obviously there's gray zones, and there's gray zones with everything. So and when you learn other languages and you see that an idea that is so obvious and distinguished in one language may be open-ended and like blurry in another, and then you realize that the framework for your interpretation of everything is just based on a lot of your what you've been exposed to so far, especially your language. I think this is like a little bit of like the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, that like your language determines the way you view the world. Right. Which I like, and I also don't like, but I don't know. I think coming from that perspective, you start to see that everything you know to be something is really, it's just an approximation anyway. So it's
all a construct.
Yeah. So as right as you can be or want to be, it's like ultimately, how much does it matter? Whatever. We're all gonna die and be wrong about tons of things. So who cares?
Just to kind of the stuff that Shaye was talking about initially was like linguistics 101 is one of the first, and I think everyone should have to take like linguistics 101. Like, I mean, can you imagine like being given this tool and you're never really taught how to use it? Like you've mastered it to an extent, and it's just like you're using it well enough, but maybe you're expelling like too much energy to use it correctly. But like there's that idea in linguistics of sense and referent, and when I say cat, it's like the sense is okay, whiskers, tail, fur, claws, etc. Like those are your senses, and then like the referent is like, oh, I had a cat named Hobie in second grade, and it's simple when you get into like concrete constructs or ideas like cat, car, couch, like Shaye was mentioning. But then it gets so much more complicated when you get into abstract ideas like love, democracy, justice, fairness, and then everybody's sense and referent is so different. So I mean, I almost feel like, and this is maybe like this is like a criticism of postmodernism too, right? That like we have to first, before we can even have the argument, we have to establish a definition. But I think there's benefit to that. I think there's benefit to both people being like, especially now with a lot of the division we see in America, it's like, all right, well, like what exactly is your sense of justice? And then like, what is your referent? Like, what are you basing this off of? Mm-hmm. So, especially with like the older generation, like, well, life's not fair. And it's like, where does that come from? Like, where the fuck?
That's an answer. So that's it. Yeah, that's great, man. I really like where both of you guys took that, because we're at a time, especially with the internet and technology, we're kind of just forced to look at our perceptions, and we're kind of forced to, I don't know if we're we're trying to make them all work, like we're this big experiment of like trying to make everybody's different views, because we're not trying to discover like the truth as much as we're all trying to like explain the truths that feel right to us as individuals as we go every day. um yeah, it's super interesting. So I have never learned another language. I would like to at some point. My fiance is, I say fiance weirdly because I just recently got engaged, so it doesn't roll off the tongue.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. Very pumped about it. But she wants to eventually learn Spanish, and now there's just so many different ways to learn it that I think it's going to be cool when people are able to learn different languages and really realize how we see reality so differently. Like when I started learning anything about like Eastern world philosophy or any like Buddhism or Hinduism, there was like, Tao and these certain words that like when I heard when I heard certain people, Alan Watts, for example, talk about these things, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Like there's not even like a setting for the subject that you're talking on. But then once I started listening more and more, I imagine this is a little bit kind of how our brains learn language. It's like you start to understand the concept that you didn't have an arena for. You didn't have like a practice room that even existed for you to go in and understand the things. That's super confusing. But learning language, I think, is a super cool thing. And I imagine what it does to our brains is a lot of, this probably sends off similar signals and similar things of when we completely change our perception of what we thought we knew,
Yeah. And I'll like kind of humble brag for Shaye here. Like Shaye is a brilliant linguist. I mean, I love the way he thinks about language. So like I warn anybody who wants to get into a debate with him about it, because he thinks about it a lot. And Shaye, I know you speak Spanish, you speak a little bit of Swedish, you speak French. Is there anything else in that like Swiss Army mouth of yours?
No, not that I speak, but I did take a really keen interest into Esperanto for a little while. And for anyone who's like a true language nerd, they're excited that I'm mentioning probably their favorite constructed language. But yeah, no, it's really interesting because what you were just describing, especially about like having like the space to understand that idea. One of the guys we talked to in microdosing camp, he's a science writer for the Max Planck Institute. He had this really awesome idea, and I'll be totally honest. I know I don't I can tell my understanding of this idea is still pretty nascent. Like it's not totally part of me, so forgive me if I don't explain it in the best way. But his thesis was basically you can't talk to someone something about. I'm sorry. You can't talk to someone about something they don't already know. Or is it you can't teach them that they have to already have a pretty good understanding of it for the language to make sense to them at all. And I think that's basically what you're saying. Like if you don't have the understanding, the word isn't going to make sense. The language has to follow the I don't know exactly the word. The experience, the cognition, something, the understanding fundamentally.
Yeah. In my head, I like to call it. I think visually, and so a lot of times in my head, it's the setting, the arena. It's almost like the beginning of the conversation. Here's what we're talking about. But it's so hard to pinpoint. I do know. I understand what you are saying though, and I think that's a great place. I think that a lot of our arguments now in the like the crazy news world, whatever America's doing right now, I think it's a lot of that, people not understanding that they're in different arenas. Like we're like in different stadiums yelling at each other and thinking that like the sound is going over the top of them and we're having a perfect conversation. It's just madness. So what you guys are doing is super cool. So tell me about the future plans that you guys have. I know right now you mentioned you're working on adult friendships, but what's the plan to lean into? How do you guys come up with your new subjects?
Well, I think really we just right now we're trying to think of a couple different approaches. What's interesting and kind of universally relatable to some people. So I think the friendship one is everyone right now, especially with COVID, a lot of people are really struggling to find meaningful connection, and ourselves included. Like I spend most of my time with my girlfriend now, which is not how I ever used to be. I'm a really social person. And so now like investigating what friendship is, the idea there is just that it's universal. We also have, I think, like there's part of like this like punk rock screamo band side of us that like wants to really push some boundaries. So we have should we talk about our big plans, Ian, for our next camp, or is that
This one's been a little contentious with people. Like we've grown hesitant to talk about it because I mean I guess it's a sensitive issue, for a lot of people. So I mean, how like are you gonna get uncomfortable if we talk about like demons and like evocation?
Summon them. Let's do this. No, I have a Ouija board right here. I was just doing a ritual last night. Well, I'm all ears. I'm supremely open to new experiences and new knowledge. I'm definitely want to hear all about this.
Yeah.
Well, my
listeners are also open. They're not going to like come to try to cancel you guys or anything either. My listeners are really cool.
Well, wait to cancel us until we have a couple episodes out, a couple more out. But I mean, you nailed it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to spend 2 weeks every day trying to summon demons. And we're going to try and find as many traditions that have evocation practices and just try them all with the kind of the background idea is that we identify as agnostic, atheist, somewhere in that area. And if we really are so strong in these convictions, then this shouldn't be scary for us, and it shouldn't be there should be nothing to worry about. So we're effectively putting our money where our mouth is. And I think to some people it's terrifying for them because they truly believe that there'll be something there. For me, it feels almost like I feel bad because I feel like I'm making fun of someone, but I really want to come at it with the perspective of like, no, I really want to try this and I really want to believe it, which is different from Ian because we've already we've done a segment on this already, like in anticipation for the episode called Ignorance in a Bottle, where we talk about our preconceptions before we do any research on it. So we don't kind of spoil our ignorance. We keep our ignorance preserved. And Ian has some reticence. Like he's already afraid.
So and my thing isn't necessarily like a religious thing as well. Like my thing is, you spend 32 years with your brain and you begin to develop an understanding of how it works. And like I know what I need to avoid, and like I know what I know how to outsmart my impulses essentially. And I have an extremely overactive imagination, so it's like I don't watch horror movies. I'm not a big fan of gore. Like I avoid certain things. I've got like a relatively addictive personality, so there's certain things I'm like, okay, I shouldn't fuck with this. So with demon summoning camp, it's like I already know I'm gonna be like any bump in the night, any like shadow cast, I'm gonna be like, oh fuck, it's the devil.
That's the demons.
Yeah,
they're here.
Oh, they found me. So it's just like I know that like it's gonna be like that for me for 2 weeks, and then maybe for weeks after. I mean, like you're talking to a guy, and like I will totally tell in myself here. In high school, I saw, I think it was The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and like I was so freaked out that like I was next. Because I don't know why. I was just such like a sweet, supple boy for the demons. I like snuck into my parents' room and slept at the foot of their bed because I guess Satan doesn't possess you if you're with mommy and daddy. Like,
oh no.
Yeah.
Oh man, Paranormal Activity had that same effect on me. It's funny looking at it now. It seems like a corny movie to watch, but it's at that time I'm like, wait, like a security camera movie. And is that real? Were they sleeping and the covers came off? You don't really know. I think that's a really cool idea. I think that you'll be surprised at how it's almost like a lot of these subjects, when you go into them, you think you're learning about this aspect of that subject, but you're almost are forced to learn about something completely different within the exact same experience. I think that even just observing. You guys should also, and I'm sure you do, take notes of your fear every day. Like, are you looking over your shoulder a little more? Are you, because I think even those words, I'm not sure what I think about all that myself, but even those words, have like meanings that pop things into your mind that you weren't planning on thinking about that day for sure. So that's, but we also play Grand Theft Auto and we don't go driving our cars around killing hookers and stuff. So Yeah, that's super cool. How did you guys land on that one? Is it really just the putting your money where your mouth is? Like here's what we know strongly, what we feel strongly. Let's try to push up against that, or try to um, even just like put a megaphone on that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think the idea was at first we were looking at different religious beliefs as atheists, and then we looked at some of them, and like some of them just don't feel like you can't do Islam. Like I feel like there's
you kind of can't, because
Okay.
I mean, like, just
so
just to interrupt
touchy.
really quickly and then back out. Like I remember when we first met, before I got you the job at the English Language Institute, I had a bunch of Muslim students, and it was Ramadan. So I observed Ramadan with them because they were like, "Oh, we're hungry, we're sleepy, we're thirsty," and I was like, "All right, I'm going to observe Ramadan with you, and under the pretense that if I don't complain, you can't complain, and we learn the lesson." So I think I think you're right that there's not necessarily like you can't just convert, but you can observe or participate in some of the orthopraxy.
Right. Yeah. I specifically just mean, I don't want to be a tourist in someone's religion, especially a religion that in our country, there are people who are targeted for those beliefs, in a dangerous way. So, we want to avoid that. And we want to be sensitive to people who have suffered. So we were thinking about those and those religions. And Christianity seems like such an easy target these days, and Judaism has also had its fair share of anti-Semitism. So then we're like, well, what about Satanism? And then we're like, well, what do we do with Satanism? And then eventually this idea of like demon summoning, and then we're just like, well, that's really all we're interested in. That's the headline for Satanism anyway. Let's just jump straight to that. And then we almost kind of reverse engineered it. And we're like, well, okay, well, pagans and witches do this as well. From the little we understand so far, we haven't started the camp yet, so we're still pretty ignorant about it. But we understand that there's like other traditions that do evocation. That's not even necessarily a Christian belief. It predates Christianity, I'm pretty sure, for a long time.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try all these things, and just see kind of where it takes us, and hopefully, we get like we get the punk rock energy going for some other people too, because it does feel kind of counterculture, and it is fun to relive this like rebellious younger side while also genuinely trying to learn.
Yes. As a fellow young man who was emo and wore lots of tight black pants growing up himself, I'm with you, boys. I think that right now, I keep saying right now, especially, but we're kind of at this weird edge in our civilization where we're not able to have important conversations because they're weirdo. Like and they make us uncomfortable, so we don't want to talk about them. Like, I mean, I even noticed I had a conversation with my friend who's black on a podcast a couple episodes ago, and basically like try to talk about the race thing. And I was just, my foot was in my mouth. I was stumbling over the words. I was like, dude, I don't know how to do this. Like, this is weird. That's a whole nother complicated issue when it comes to those things. But I think that the things that we're so solid about, we should defend them, and the things that defend them by like challenging our own beliefs about them, and like reassuring ourselves in the beliefs, and the things that we don't know much about, we should explore. I think that's fantastic.
And I think that's part of the reason we were so excited about this subject, or just this project, was Shaye, feel free to like back me up, add on, or subtract anything, but like I think it was kind of this idea that like, there are enough podcasts that tell people, what to think. Like, what about a podcast that like shows people how to unlearn and relearn, and like make it fun? And cause like, I mean, I do think learning is fun, like not to be like, an episode of Reading Rainbow, but like learning new things is exciting. Cause you're like, oh, like this is a whole, like I'm adding to my existence and to my understanding of what it means to be human. Like I'm enriching my already relatively rich life. Like this is great.
That's like the best thing you could do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially I feel like in the era of Twitter, where the loudest opinion, regardless of its validity or how thought out it is, gets the most attention. We're trying to ideally come out thought differently. We're trying to not just say whatever comes out and just be controversial for the sake of controversial. We're trying to be controversial for the sake of challenging preconceptions, our own especially, but challenging anyone else who might share those same preconceptions, and not just be a loud, controversial figure, but be a loud, thoughtful, controversial figure, you know?
I mean, there really isn't a lot of that. There's a lot of people who just like getting mad at something, and then like if they can get two people behind them that say, "Yeah," then they're really super empowered. I
Right.
think it's good. Guys, I think we're getting up here in time. I think that it was a fantastic intro to your podcast and what you guys are doing, and to you as individuals. I know that I checked out a couple episodes and did a little research and checked it out. I enjoy your guys' energy. I think you're both pretty damn funny. I think that the quality of the podcast is pretty good too. I like the little inserts and the sounds, and it's just great. It's well ran. I really, really appreciated it. And so I thought it was really cool that you guys reached back out to me when I said, hey. So I'm glad that you came on today, guys.
Thank you so
Likewise,
much, man.
man. Yeah.
This was such a great conversation, and we were so excited when you contacted us, because we listened to a couple episodes, and I don't know, the vibe is just awesome, man. I really appreciate
Yeah.
what you're doing as well. So thank you so much.
I was gonna say something nice, but I forgot.
Well, I'll wait and you think of something.
Okay, just give me a second. Oh man, damn
Come on,
it, I
Ian.
had it, and then I was like listening to Shay, and I'm like, Shay's.
Yeah.
look
How
at-
about
look at Shay
instead?
go.
How about instead you just give the listeners all of your guys' info? So if they want to go like, follow you guys' podcast, write this is so Camp ReEducation, because they find that on Spotify, all those.
Yeah, you can find Camp ReEducation anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Just plug it up. We'll be there waiting for you with open arms. We're so excited to have you. We just can't wait to bring you into camp. We also have a website, campreeducation.com. We absolutely love getting suggestions. We have a page where if you listen to an episode and we got something wrong, or if you just want to insult Shay or I in a really funny way, we would love to read that on the air and crack each other up. So feel free to do that as well. Shay, am
That's
I missing
epic.
anything? Sorry.
No, just I think you forgot to direct them to mostly point the insults in your direction. I'm far too sensitive. I cannot really handle that. So thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
Bring it on.
I'm and also, just since I'm part of this conversation, I'm emotional and soft, so please don't insult me.
Yeah, Jacob, our beautiful boy Jacob is off limits. Okay.
Yes, I'm off limits. Cool, guys. This was super cool. I hope to stay in contact with you guys once in a while. I really think what you're doing is super cool, and I hope we get some new listeners for you out of this experience.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you,
man.
and likewise, man.
I wish I sounded as smart on my show as I was able to sound on yours, but Shay doesn't give me any layups. He's just like the Kunta Kinte. He just smacks them all out. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah, I edit however smart Ian sounds, that's how I edit him to sound. So.
Too epic.
All right.
Fellas. Well, have
All
a
right.
good rest of your day, and I can't wait for the next episode of Camp ReEducation.
All right,
right,
cool.
thanks,
Thank you,
brother.
brother. Thanks again, man. It was a great time.
Yeah. See you later.
So are we actually leaving, or are we just?
Knowledge is power.